Okay, so we're going to be looking at UVs and how UVs work inside of 3D Studio Max. So the same thing pretty much applies to Maya or Blender with some slight changes depending on the program you're using. But for Max, for instance, this is going to be like a 3D screen. So this is going to be a screen like a sci-fi computer screen. So we'll make this outside metal, and then we'll make the inside the actual material, the textured material. So let's kind of go through how we're going to do that. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and assign an entire material to this object. And then what I want to do is I actually want to assign a different material to the face here. That way I can make these something else. Even though this is going to be textured, there'll still be two different material channels. So I'm going to go into my material and I'll assign a different one. I'm going to make a different color just so it's a little bit easier for you guys to see. Okay, so there we go. So I've got my blue screen and then my essential just outside. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to UV map. So I can go to unwrap UVW. I'm going to hit Control A, which is going to select all of it, and then open up my UV editor. So this is what it looks like by default, which is not ideal for me. So instead I'm going to come down here and I'm going to tell it that I'd like it to box project. Okay. And once I do that, you can see they're actually stacked on top of each other, which again is not ideal. So I'm going to go to mapping, flatten mapping, which is going to lay them all out for me. And if you notice, I unchecked rescale, so that way they stayed the appropriate proportions, which is I wanted them to do. So now I come in here and move them around. Right. So now I'm going to have a couple things to look at. So I'm going to turn on my component selection here. Turn on component. So then if I click on this one, I can see where that one is. So that's the back, right? So again, not that important. This is the front. This is the one that is important right here. So what I'm going to do is, since all of these are essentially going to be the same, I'm just going to kind of slide them down here and stack them together, but I am going to go ahead and flip this one so that way it lines up with the back there. So you can see wherever you click, it will highlight that face. That way you know what you're selecting. So I'm just going to move these out of the way. The reason I'm moving these out of the way is so that I have a lot of room for this thing. So I'm going to flip it and flip it. Now I don't know if this is going to be actually pointed the right direction or not. So we're going to find that out, but it's very easy to fix if it is. Okay, so I've moved this around. So this is actually my screen, right? I can see that's going to be my screen there. And all of this is just going to be my metal pieces. So if you're building an actual texture, what you would do is move these. If they're going to have their own things, their own looks, you're going to move them so you can easily identify what each piece is and where it goes. Now, once I've done that, I need to go ahead and render this out so I can take it into Photoshop. So I'm going to go to Tools, Render UVW Template, and render that out. So that's going to give me this here, so I can mess with it a bit easier. All right, so we've got our UVs ready to go. So this is them. What you need to do is render out what's called a UV template. If you're in Maya, you can go to polygons. It's called like render UV snapshot, something like that. So I'm going to click render UV template, which is that guy, and then we're going to save it. So I've already called it screen UV. Just save it as a JPEG. And close that. Then we go to Photoshop. Okay, so I've got it in Photoshop here. I'm going to go ahead and unlock that layer, and I'm going to invert it. So I'm going to hit Control I, which is going to invert it, which is going to make it a little bit easier to edit. I'm going to add a new layer. Put this layer under that one. Photoshop is going real slow. Okay, so I'm going to put this layer under that one. I'm going to take this layer and adjust the opacity down a bit so I can just see the outline there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock this layer so I can't click it. I'm going to come back down here. So what I need to do is I want to import an image and essentially put it in here, right? So fit it inside of this area. So I'm simply going to open an image, which I've already saved. So there it is right there. So then I'm just going to go ahead and highlight it and bring it in. Okay, so I need to scale this way down, kind of get it into place. So there we go. Okay, so I'm going to have some dead space up here. Now what you would do is kind of go in and actually edit this back down, or you'll see I'm actually going to do that once I go back to max. So I've got that done. So I'm going to hit enter to kill that transformation. So there it is. And then I need to save this as my texture. If you notice, I'm not worrying about these other things because they're just going to be different material. So I don't need to worry about it because they're just going to be metal, and I can just make those metal in Unreal. So I'm going to turn off that layer. So I just have this one. I'm going to do a file, save as. This is going to be a JPEG. I'll call it screen UV diffuse. Be a 12 for the quality. I'll come back into max. I'm going to open up my material editor. So this is the material that I've assigned to that one, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And I will choose a bitmap. So bitmap, it's on my desktop. I called it screen UV diffuse. Hit OK. There it is. So now what I'm going to do is go to materials, show materials in viewport so I can look at them. Okay, so that's cool. Now the main reason I did this is so that I could show you how I can actually fix an image, right? So I'm going to open UV editor and select this. Actually, I'm going to uncheck that. Go to vertices. I'm going to grab these two vertices. I'm going to switch back to my move tool. Just going to move vertically. Right? So now I went ahead and lined that up so that actually fills it appropriately. Now, unfortunately, it is going to stretch because that's the nature of the image, right? I would need to actually design an image that would properly fit in there in Photoshop. You do the manipulation in Photoshop or Illustrator, wherever you're drawing the image. But if you notice, that actually fixes it, so it actually lines up nicely and perfectly right there. Okay, so that's going to give us a very basic UV, and then we're going to take this and put that into Unreal. Now again, you notice that I did not do anything really on this outside UV. I can assign that material to it, but I won't do anything because I just want that to be a flat material channel like silver or chrome. I don't have any details on it, so it doesn't matter. If I was going to detail it, I'd need to go ahead and do that properly inside of Photoshop, right?